The first Megan movie that came out back in January 2023 was not only one of the biggest surprises of that movie year, but one of the biggest surprises I think we've had in the 2020s decade so far. The trailers looked like it might be fun, but January has always had this reputation of putting out really bad movies. So as soon as Blumhouse says they got a robot killer doll movie, I kind of don't have faith in that idea. I ended up missing it in theaters. I watched it at home in my apartment with my girlfriend and my sister, and we had a fantastic time with it. There are very few movies that have made me laugh harder than that. My sister and girlfriend also loved it. It was a great time. To this day, the Titanium Lullaby has got to be one of the best Gen Z movie moments ever. We will always look back to that and say, yeah, that was cinema. And Megan herself has to be up there for being the biggest horror icon in modern Hollywood, because every other studio is salivating to get a character as iconic as this. And this was one of the rare horror sequels that I knew was being made just to make money, but I was actually excited for it. I was so excited to the point that I would probably say this was one of my most anticipated movies of the entire summer. If you've been following the channel for a while, you know I avoid trailers at all costs. The only thing I knew about the movie was that it was doing the Terminator 2 thing where they make the sequel an action movie, and that was all I knew. So I went in really excited, hoping I was going to like this just as much as the first one, and I was really let down by it. And clearly a lot of people were too, considering the substantial drop in box office when you compare what this has done not only in the opening weekend, but the entire run of the first Megan movie. Blumhouse took a swing on this, and it has done nothing but miss for a lot of people. I think there are still people that will enjoy it. My friend Jake absolutely loved it. There were a good amount of people in my theater still laughing at a lot of stuff. So I don't think necessarily this is a huge flop in terms of the general audience's perspective. Like, the box office being as bad as it is does surprise me a little bit, if I'm being honest. I understand why somebody wouldn't want to see this one if they wanted it to stay in the horror roots, but it's just doing the Terminator 2 thing again. So in my head, this still should have been making money. But if there are a lot of people that feel like me and feel like Megan was kind of lightning in a bottle and this just isn't lightning in the bottle, the lightning just kind of missed right here, then yeah, I think a lot of things add up. But I don't think the movie is like the worst thing I've ever seen. I think there's still redeeming qualities about it. And obviously Megan herself is still the star of the Megan movie. I mean, from her inception in the first movie, I thought the character was really well done. I think the idea, while kind of basic, they made the most of it. They made her this dancing diva kind of robot that is genuinely funny. Like, I feel like a lot of horror icons like this, like Chucky had the same thing where he was just so ridiculous, but he was funny enough that you would want to see more Chucky movies. And even if Megan's jokes aren't hitting as hard in this movie compared to the first one, there's still enough there where I had a bit of a smile at certain points. She was the only person in this that did make me laugh once or twice. And even if every Child's Play movie doesn't necessarily hit, Chucky's still gonna have lines of dialogue that are funny from any of those movies. And even if I was disappointed by this one, Megan is so good of a character that I would go see Megan 3 day one. I might be let down again, but I just think the character has so much potential that even though I'm usually against milking franchises, if the franchise itself is fun and you're getting a decent entry, like, it's not the worst thing ever. Like, I'll talk about the new Jurassic Park in a future video coming up soon, but even though that movie wasn't terrible, I was still entertained throughout a lot of it. I just think it kind of fell flat in a lot of areas. And Megan does something similar, except it's just not very entertaining most of the time. There are a few things I liked in this one. Like, there is a sequence where the evil robot takes over. There's this guy that has a chip in his brain, and she kind of reverses his sight so that he's seeing himself from a third person perspective. That entire idea I thought was really well done and cool and freaky. I also like the way Megan herself is revealed in the movie. Not the very first time you see her, because it's kind of like a digital on a screen version. The time you see the real practical effect of Megan for the first time was hilarious, and I think the way they handle that reveal was really funny. But besides that, I think the biggest problem I have with this movie is that the writing just takes such a nosedive compared to the first movie, and it forced me to go digging on this because I knew Gerard Johnstone, the director of the first movie, was returning for this one, and he wrote wrote this one. So I was like, why is it such a dip in quality? But then I realized he is writing a sequel to a movie he never wrote. The first Megan movie was written by Akilah Cooper, who also recently wrote Malignant, which a lot of people would consider to be one of the most fun horror movies of the decade, and I would include myself in that. That movie's fun, Megan is hilarious, so clearly within the space of horror, she is somebody that should be writing more of these fun, campy horror movies. And I'm not going to say that Gerard doesn't understand the character of Megan, because I don't think that's necessarily true at all. I think it finally clicked to him what people liked about her. I just don't think he knows how to maximize that character's potential within a movie. I guess more so a script, since he directed the first one. And I could be wrong on this, should have done more research, but I believe he said in an interview recently that Universal came up with the idea of making Megan dance in the first movie, because he said something along the lines of, oh yeah, they told me to put that in the movie, and it ended up being a great idea. And there's nothing wrong with studios collaborating with their filmmakers. I think that should be encouraged, but I think that kind of set off a red alarm in my brain of like, this guy just doesn't fully get the potential of the character. And because of that, a lot of this movie just feels like he took what worked in the first movie and was like, oh, the audience really liked this part, let's do it again. Did you like Megan dancing the first time? Well, let's put her on stage this time. Did you like Megan singing the first time? Well, guess what? She's gonna sing again. And even as a fan of the first movie, I expected there to be a singing scene in this movie, obviously. The problem is that scene in Megan 2 is nowhere near as funny as the first one. And I've made it very clear on this channel and in my personal life, I don't know shit about music. There's a lot of songs that come on, I have no idea who the artist is. And when the song came on in Megan 2, I had no idea, but I wasn't surprised I wouldn't know what the song is, because I don't know a lot of songs in general. And after research, it did end up being a Kate Bush song that I'm sure is popular for a lot of people. But I think the difference of the writing in Megan and Megan 2 is that Akilah Cooper was just so much more in line with what she knew younger audiences would want to see in this character. Because the difference of Megan singing Titanium as a lullaby is just targeting a completely different audience than people that listened to Kate Bush years ago. And the fact that my girlfriend and sister didn't know the song either, like we were all on a FaceTime call together and my sister was like, hey Olivia, what was the song? Because I had no idea. And then my girlfriend said, yeah, I didn't know what the song was either. And we all had to do research to find out what the song was. I think that just speaks volumes about how Gerard didn't fully grasp what made the character viral in the first place. And then you have the switch to action, which I do think is a fine enough idea for a franchise like Megan. I've said Terminator 2 multiple times. Gerard himself has said this is a Terminator 2 copy multiple times. Everyone that talks about this movie that has seen Terminator 1 and 2 knows that this is clearly ripping off Terminator 2, and that's fine. And I think the character can fit in an action movie. I just don't think any of the action in Megan 2 is really exciting at all. I'm not going to act like it's terrible, because there were a couple shots where I was like, okay, like that was kind of cool, but I just felt like 85% of the shots were just kind of boring, and most of it just doesn't feel memorable at all. There's another sequence where she's in a flying squirrel suit, and it just looks like CGI slop. It looks terrible. And there could have been some really cool potential if she had to go on like a Tom Cruise kind of mission, and obviously it's always going to look like CGI. I just thought it looked terrible. There was no like stakes in the jump or anything. It just all felt really bland. But the biggest problem I have with the movie is that I just didn't laugh that much, like at all. I think I laughed out loud one time. And this is somebody that loves the first Megan movie and was howling at a lot of the jokes. I laughed out loud one time at one thing that Megan did. And the first one I'd put up there with some of the hardest laughs I've had in a very long time for a movie. And again, you have Gerard writing the jokes this time, which I don't think are as strong in this screenplay compared to the first one. And the jump to the action genre could have worked, but I think a lot of the jokes hit a lot harder in the first movie because it's within the context of being a horror movie. Like when somebody in the movie, or like a dog in the first Megan, would kind of look at Katie or do something to Katie in some sort of way, and Megan gives them just like a death stare. It's hilarious. And I think because there's not really a horror element to this one, you kind of lose a lot of the comedy when it comes to those kinds of jokes. And I think if they do end up doing a Megan 3 at some point, they could probably do some action, but I think making the jump to horror again is probably the better choice. I also think there is a huge missed opportunity here when it comes to the villain Amelia, who's another robot. She has to be up there with being one of the most boring new villains in a movie in a very long time. She is not interesting in any kind of way. I really thought they were going to give her some sort of personality that she could go back and forth with Megan. That to me, that's like the obvious thing to do, because you know what makes Megan interesting? It's not the fact that she's a robot. It's the fact that she's a robot that is hilarious. So to make the villain of the movie not have any personality whatsoever and just be just a wall, literally just a wall to talk to, it's such a bad idea. They should have had another cunty robot. That would have been so much funnier. And honestly, in terms of performances, I think a lot of the humans are really bad in this movie. Like, I remember Allison Williams being good as Gemma, or at least decent in the first movie. And maybe I have to rewatch that because I thought she was pretty atrocious here. It feels like she has zero desire to be in this movie besides getting a nice paycheck, and I don't blame her, but it just has to be up there with one of the most boring performances of the entire year. I don't like picking on bad kid acting, but I also think Violet McGraw as Katie is pretty bad in this movie. And maybe I'd be a bit lighter on it if I didn't just watch 28 Years Later, because that happens to have a great child performance. But just the combination of this teenage version of the character and the dialogue she has written for her, I just don't think it was a great portrayal of her skill. I wish the girl the best. I hope she ends up having a great career. I just didn't really like her in this role. I will say Jason Blum came out pretty recently and talked about how he understood why this movie flopped, and he understood he wasn't giving the audience exactly what they wanted. And in his defense, a little bit, I don't think this is necessarily not what the audience wanted. Like, I think you could have made that jump to action. I've seen some people complain it should be a horror movie. In retrospect, yes, it should be another horror movie. And I give him credit for talking about his movie flopping when it's only been out for like 3 weeks. A lot of people don't do that. He also didn't point the finger at Gerard and say, yeah, that guy messed up. We didn't know what we were doing. It was all like, we as a team should have approached this better. And I respect him for doing that, for sure. But I think at the end of the day, if the choice to switch to action was still made and the movie was just as good as the first one, nobody would really complain. It seems like the general sentiment online is a lot of people kind of just forgot about this movie already. No one's pushing people to go see it. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't tell somebody to go spend their money to go watch this movie. I'm sure diehard Megan fans went out to see it, and I am pretty surprised, especially because I live in Orlando. I do the Universal Horror Night stuff. Megan is a big deal, it seems like. Like, I know a lot of people love the character because people go crazy when she's involved in any sort of Horror Nights thing. So I don't really fully grasp what went wrong. Like, obviously the switch is a big deal, but I think if they really nail down a great script and a great idea for Megan 3, they could easily bounce this franchise back. I don't think another Megan movie would bomb unless they bring the same writer again. Like I said, I don't think this movie is terrible necessarily. I just didn't enjoy it. And it got to the point where while I was watching this one, it made me think in my head of like, did I really like the first one that much? Like, would it still hold up if I watched it today knowing what the movie is? I think I would still like it because I rewatched the Titanium clip and I still laughed a lot. But I sat down in the theater for Megan 2, 2 hours on the dot passed, and I felt nothing. And that sucks for any movie that gives me that feeling, but it hurts even more when it's for a movie you were really looking forward to. And I really hope they change the franchise around when they do part 3 inevitably. So yeah, this is Chase. Thank you so much for watching as always. I really appreciate your time, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my review of Seed of Megan.